Ex-fiancé refused to move out after she canceled our engagement because she was bored of me. I'm going to dive right into a story that still kind of feels surreal to me. I'm a 35-year-old guy, and I've worked hard to get where I am. I'm worked at a pretty big company, and I've always been the kind of guy who believes in building a stable life. I met my ex-fiancé, Amanda, at a mutual friend's wedding about 3 years ago. Amanda is 32 and worked as a marketing executive at the time. We hit it off almost immediately. She was outgoing, charming, and seemed to have her life together. For the first 2 years, our relationship felt like a dream. We were compatible in so many ways, shared common interests, and our friends even joked that we were relationship goals. About months ago, I proposed to her, and she said yes. It felt like everything was falling into place. We started planning our wedding, and Amanda moved into my house a year ago. It wasn't a mansion, but it was a decent place I'd worked hard to buy. I was excited about building a future together. About 2 months ago, out of the blue, Amanda told me she wanted to break off the engagement. I remember standing there completely blindsided as she explained that she felt trapped and not ready for marriage. To say I was heartbroken would be an understatement. I tried to understand where she was coming from and asked her if there was anything we could do to work through her doubts. Maybe we could postpone the wedding, give her some more time to feel comfortable. But Amanda was firm. She didn't want to get married, not to me, not to anyone right now. She said she needed time to find herself. Whatever that meant, it was clear she was done. I was devastated, but I knew that if she didn't want to be with me, there was no point in dragging it out. The relationship was over, and I had to accept that. But the next step seemed pretty straightforward to me. If she didn't want to be with me, she had to move out. I mean, it was my house after all. When I asked Amanda to move out, I tried to be as gentle as possible, given the circumstances. I gave her a 30-day notice, figuring that would be more than enough time for her to find a new place. But instead of agreeing to it, she flat out refused to leave. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She claimed that she had nowhere to go and no money saved up. This shocked me because as far as I knew, she was doing fine financially. We'd never had issues splitting expenses, and she made a decent salary. But then she confessed that she had quit her job a few weeks ago without telling me. She said she'd been feeling overwhelmed and needed a break. The money she had saved up, well, she'd already spent most of it on shopping sprees and spontaneous trips with her friends. I was floored. How could she have hidden something so significant from me? I asked her why she didn't tell me sooner, why she kept this all to herself, but she didn't have a straight answer. She just said she was figuring things out and didn't want to stress me out. But now she was expecting me to let her stay in my house indefinitely while she got her life together. I couldn't believe the audacity. As you can imagine, things started to go downhill pretty fast after that. Amanda became increasingly difficult to live with. She started inviting her friends over all the time, turning our home into a non-stop party zone. I'd come home from work, exhausted, only to find the living room filled with people I didn't even know. They'd be drinking, making a mess, and acting like they owned the place. When I confronted Amanda about it, she brushed me off, saying that she needed to unwind, and that her friends were just helping her through a tough time. But it didn't stop there. She stopped doing any household chores, dishes piled up, laundry was left scattered everywhere, and the place was constantly a mess. It was like living with a rebellious teenager rather than a grown-ass woman. I felt like a stranger in my own home. A few weeks into this nightmare, I accidentally stumbled upon something. Amanda had left her phone on the kitchen counter while she was in the shower, and it kept buzzing with notifications. Normally I wouldn't snoop, but something in my gut told me to check it out. And boy, am I glad, or maybe not so glad, that I did. I unlocked her phone and found a bunch of messages between her and one of her co-workers. Let's call him Eric. The messages were, well, let's just say they were anything but platonic. As I scrolled through the conversation, it became clear that Amanda had been cheating on me with Eric for months. They had been meeting up behind my back, and she had even been planning to leave me once she had enough money saved up. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Here I was, trying to be understanding and giving her space while she was sneaking around with someone else. I thought back to all the times I'd asked her if something was wrong, all the times I tried to make things work, and all the while she was lying to my face. That night, I confronted Amanda about what I'd found. I laid out everything. The messages, the cheating. I expected some sort of remorse, maybe an apology or at least an explanation. But instead, Amanda just looked at me completely unfazed. She didn't deny it. In fact, she seemed almost relieved that I knew. She told me she had been unhappy for months, and that our relationship had become boring. She said Eric made her feel alive again, and she didn't regret what she'd done. I was stunned. How could she be so cold, so unapologetic? I was done playing nice. I told her she had 48 hours to move out or I'd take legal action. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me anymore. The moment I gave her that ultimatum, something in her snapped. We got into a heated argument, with Amanda hurling all sorts of insults at me, blaming me for everything wrong in her life. She accused me of being controlling, of not being supportive enough, and even of being the reason she cheated. It was like she was trying to twist everything to make herself the victim. After that argument, I decided to dig a little deeper into our shared finances just to see if there was anything else she had been hiding. Amanda had racked up a lot. She had maxed out several credit cards on luxury items, expensive dinners and trips, but that wasn't the worst part. She had also been using my credit cards without my permission. I found charges for things I didn't recognize: high-end clothing stores, fancy restaurants, and even a weekend getaway that I definitely wasn't invited to. She had been living it up at my expense, all while pretending that everything was fine between us. I was furious. I confronted her about the unauthorized charges and she didn't even try to deny it. She just shrugged and said she figured I wouldn't notice. I couldn't believe the audacity. At that point, it was clear that she had no respect for me, or the life we had built together. The next day, while I was at work, she decided to retaliate in the most immature way possible. When I came home, I was greeted by a scene that looked like it was straight out of a horror movie. The house was trashed. Furniture was overturned, the walls were covered in graffiti, and valuable items were missing. She had even taken some of my family heirlooms, things that were irreplaceable. There were nasty messages written on the walls in what I assumed was permanent marker, calling me every name under the sun. It was like she had gone out of her way to hurt me in every way possible. I was beyond angry, but more than that, I was hurt. How could someone I had loved and trusted turn into this vindictive person? I knew I couldn't let this go. Amanda had crossed a line, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I filed a police report for theft and property damage the next day. I also contacted a lawyer to begin the eviction process. It was clear that Amanda wasn't going to leave on her own, so I needed to take legal action to get her out of my house. The lawyer helped me draft an official eviction notice, which I served to Amanda later that week. She was furious when she received it, but at that point, I didn't care. I was done playing nice. She had to go, and I was going to do whatever it took to make that happen. My family and friends were shocked when they found out what had happened. They had always liked Amanda, and no one had seen this side of her before. My parents were incredibly supportive, offering to help me clean up the mess she had left behind and even offering me a place to stay while I sorted everything out. It was comforting to know that I wasn't alone in this, but it didn't make the situation any less painful. I had trusted Amanda, and she had betrayed me in the worst way possible. After receiving the eviction notice, Amanda tried to change her tune. She started begging me to reconsider, saying that she had made a mistake and that she wanted to work things out. She tried to manipulate me with reminders of the good times we'd had, saying that we could get back to that if we just tried. But I wasn't buying it. I knew she was only trying to stay because she had nowhere else to go. When she realized that her attempts to manipulate me weren't working, she turned to threats. She said that if I went through with the eviction, she would tell all our mutual friends, and even my coworkers, that I had been abusive both emotionally and physically. She said she'd destroy my reputation and make sure that no one believed my side of the story. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was willing to stoop that low just to stay in my house. It was like I didn't even know her anymore, but I wasn't going to let scare me. I knew the truth, and I had the evidence to back it up. If she wanted to play dirty, I was ready. The day of the eviction finally arrived. I had informed the police of the situation, and they agreed to be there to enforce the eviction if necessary. When I showed up at the house with the police, Amanda was still there. She had barricaded herself in the master bedroom and refused to come out. I couldn't believe she was taking it this far. The police knocked on the door and told her that she needed to leave, but she started screaming and crying, saying that she was going to hurt if they made her go. It was a nightmare. She was causing a scene, making all sorts of accusations against me, trying to make me look like the bad guy. The police had to call in a mental health professional to assess the situation, and eventually they were able to convince Amanda to come out of the room. She was escorted out of the house, still screaming and crying, but at least she was finally gone. After Amanda was finally out of my house, I changed the locks and installed a security system. I wasn't taking any chances. The house was in bad shape, and I had a lot of work to do to get it back to normal. It was painful to see the place I had called home in such a state, but I was determined to rebuild. I started by cleaning up the mess she had left behind, throwing out the things she had destroyed, and repairing the damage. It was a slow process, but with the help of my family and friends, I managed to get the house back in order. But it wasn't just the physical damage that needed repairing. Once Amanda was out of the house, I pursued legal action for the theft and property damage. The police had all the evidence they needed, and my lawyer was confident that we had a strong case. Amanda was eventually ordered to pay restitution for the items she had stolen and the damage she had caused. In addition to the restitution, I also obtained a restraining order against Amanda. I didn't want her anywhere near me or my house. I needed to move on with my life, and I couldn't do that with her lurking in the background, ready to cause more trouble. Looking back on everything that happened, I realized that there were red flags that I missed or ignored. Amanda had always been a bit of a spender, but I never thought it would get to the point where she would be using my money without my knowledge. I should have been more aware of what was going on with her, but at the same time, she should have been honest with me instead of sneaking around. This whole experience has been a wake-up call for me. I've learned that trust is earned, not given, and that I need to be more careful about who I let into my life. I'm focusing on healing and personal growth now. I've even considered selling the house and starting fresh somewhere else, but I haven't made any decisions yet. So, here I am, sharing my story with all of you. Thanks for sticking with me through this long post. I appreciate any advice or thoughts you might have. And to end on a lighter note, if anyone knows a good place to buy a sturdy, Amanda-proof security system, let me know. So, am I the asshole for kicking my ex-fiancé out of my house when she broke off our engagement and refused to move out? Update 1. Hey everyone, it's been about a month since I last posted, and I wish I could say things have calmed down, but unfortunately that's not the case. After Amanda was evicted, I was hoping she'd just disappear from my life for good. I mean, she trashed my house, stole from me, and then violated the restraining order by stalking me. She even got arrested for it, so I figured she'd finally get the message. But apparently she didn't. About 2 weeks ago, I started noticing some strange things happening around my house. It started with small stuff like someone ringing my doorbell in the middle of the night, and then running off. Then it escalated to finding my trash cans knocked over every morning. I tried to brush it off, thinking it was just some pranksters in the neighborhood. One night, I was coming home from a late shift at work when I saw something. There was a note taped to my front door. It was simple, just a piece of paper with the words "You're not safe" written on it. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was Amanda's. I immediately called the police and handed over the note. They took it seriously, but there wasn't much they could do at that point. They advised me to keep my security cameras on and document anything else that happened. They also promised to increase patrols in my area, but they couldn't be there all the time. The next day, I got a call from my security company. They notified me that there was an attempted break-in at my house. The footage showed Amanda trying to pick the lock on my front door in the dead of night. When she realized she was being recorded, she looked straight into the camera and gave it a smile before walking away. I handed the footage over to the police, and they were able to arrest her for violating the restraining order again. But just like last time, she was released on bail the very next day. It's like no matter what I do, she's always one step ahead. My lawyer suggested filing for a permanent restraining order, but that process takes time, and I'm left feeling like I'm living in a horror movie. How do I make sure she stays away for good? But does anyone have any advice on what else I can do? I feel like I'm running out of options, and I'm terrified she's going to do something even worse next time. Update 2. Hey everyone, I'm back with another update, and things have taken a turn for the worse. I thought the worst Amanda could do was break into my house, but she's found a way to hit me where it hurts the most: my job. I work as a software developer, and my job is one of the few things that's kept me sane through all of this. I love what I do, and I've worked hard to get where I am. But about 3 weeks ago, my boss called me into his office with a serious look on his face. He handed me a stack of papers and asked me to explain myself. The papers were screenshots of emails that were supposedly sent by me to various coworkers. These emails were filled with racist, sexist, and downright vile comments. There were also threats, and some of them directed at specific coworkers. I knew immediately that these emails were fake, but the problem was that they came from an email address that looked almost identical to mine. I explained to my boss that I didn't send those emails and that they had to be from Amanda. I told him about everything that had been happening, the break-in attempts, the restraining order, and how Amanda was now trying to ruin my life because I had kicked her out. Thankfully, my boss believed me. We have a good relationship, and he knows this isn't in my character at all. But even though my boss was on my side, the damage was done. Word about the emails started to spread around the office, and I could feel people giving me the cold shoulder. I even overheard some coworkers whispering about me in the break room, wondering if the rumors were true. It's been a nightmare. I got in touch with our IT department, and they were able to trace the fake emails back to an IP address that wasn't mine. They confirmed that it was someone impersonating me, but that doesn't erase the damage to my reputation. I've handed all the evidence over to the police, but they've told me the same thing: they're building a case against Amanda. But these things take time. I've considered leaving my job and finding something remote where I wouldn't have to deal with this, but that feels like letting her win. I'm stuck and don't know what to do next. Has anyone dealt with a situation like this before? I'm open to any advice because honestly, I'm at my wit's end. Update 3. Hey everyone. This is the final update, I hope. It's been about 4 months since my first post, and I finally reached what I hope is the end of this nightmare, but not without some more drama first, of course. After my last update, things continued to escalate. Amanda was still out on bail, and I was constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for her next move. I'd already dealt with her breaking into my house and trying to ruin my career, so I figured she'd come up with something even more drastic next, and I was right. About a month ago, I was leaving work late one evening when I found all 4 tires on my car slashed. My car was sitting in the parking lot on flat tires, and I knew immediately who was responsible. When I checked the security footage, there she was, Amanda, slashing my tires and then calmly walking away as if nothing had happened. I called the police again, and this time they took it more seriously. Amanda was arrested later that night, but this time I made sure she wouldn't be getting out on bail so easily. My lawyer and I pushed hard for her to be held without bail, and thankfully the judge agreed. Amanda was finally behind bars where she couldn't hurt me anymore, but the damage she'd done was still there. My reputation at work had taken a hit, my car was in the shop, and I was emotionally drained. I started seeing a lawyer more frequently to figure out what my next steps should be. He suggested suing Amanda for the damages she caused, both to my property and my reputation. He also suggested filing for a permanent restraining order, which would make it harder for her to get near me in the future. I'm pursuing both options, but it's going to be a long process. In the meantime, I've made some decisions about my life. I've decided to sell my house and move to a new city. I love my job, but I'm going to ask for a transfer to a different office, or maybe even switch to a remote position. I need a fresh start, away from all the memories of what Amanda put me through. So I guess this is goodbye for now.